In 1900, after the Belgica expedition, it was clear that Roald Amundsen's next goal would be the North-West Passage. After obtaining his master's license, he traveled to Germany to seek out the leading authority on magnetic research, George von Neumayer. He agreed to teach Amundsen the necessary science and to make sure that he would have the best scientific equipment for magnetic research with him on the voyage. Amundsen then went to Tromsø in 1901 to purchase the Gjøa. During the next 2 years, he prepared for the expedition and restored, strengthened and equipped the Gjøa. On a rainy June 16, 1903, Gjøa and a small, tightly knit crew slipped out of Christiania and headed for the North Sea. After 2 stops on the west coast of Greenland, at Godhavn for dogs and clothing the Inuit made for them, and at Dalrymple Rock to pick up a pre-arranged depot of supplies, the Gjøa was sailed into Lancaster Sound and on August 22nd reached Beechey Island, the last safe winter harbour of the Franklin expedition. From Beechey Island, they sailed down Peel Sound into Simpson Strait. The strait was free of ice westwards, and he could have continued through the North-West Passage in only 1 season. Instead, Amundsen was looking for a good wintering place where he had already decided to stay for 2 years. He found a small harbour, which he named Gjøahavn, Gjøa Harbour, at the right distance from the location of the magnetic pole for fixed magnetic station. They then began the task of unloading the cargo and establishing the new home. Near the end of October 1903, a small band of Inuit appeared at Gjøahavn. Soon, an Inuit village grew nearby. These were Nestaliks, the most isolated of the Canadian Inuit. Amundsen immediately made friends with them, and a 2-year amicable relationship started. The Norwegians learned the language and were able to communicate fully with the Inuit. The friendliness and generosity of the Inuit was repaid by the white men's goodwill and respect. The Inuit taught the Norwegians how to make igloos, how to make the sledge runners slide at very low temperatures, the art of dressing warmly in loose furs, and how to drive dogs. The Norwegians provided the Inuit with knives, needles, matches, other tools of wood and metal, and food when needed. They hunted together, and the number of Inuit assisted the Norwegians' daily chores. Amundsen was especially fascinated with these people and their incredible surviving skills. He spent a lot of time studying all aspects of their culture and gathered a large collection of artifacts that included clothing, hunting tools, utensils, kayaks, and sledges. His diary gives a great insight into the life of the Nestalik Inuit in the early 1900s. The crew gathered data in a number of scientific fields, but it was the magnetic observations that were most important. 8 magnetic field stations were operated during the stay, 4 in the neighborhood of Gjøahavn and 4 further away in Boothia Felix. Several sledge parties went out to survey coastlines and make scientific observations. In 1904, Amundsen and Ristvedt located the magnetic pole on Boothia Peninsula. Amundsen was the first to demonstrate that the North Magnetic Pole does not have a permanent location, but moves its position in a fairly regular manner. In addition, his carefully organized measurements were the first and only observations of the Earth's magnetic field in the northern polar region until modern polar observatories were established decades later. It is a testimony to the scientific abilities of Amundsen himself and his crew that they designed and carried out the first continuous magnetic variation recordings inside the high Arctic for a period of 19 months under extremely difficult conditions. On August 13, 1905, they began the difficult navigation of Simpson Strait. With one man in the crow's nest and another constantly at the lead, Gjøa steered through a succession of narrow passages, shoals and ice. On August 17th, Amundsen and his crew had taken Gjøa through the unsolved link of the North-West Passage, the part which had never been traversed by a ship. A few days later, a vessel came in sight. The Northwest Passage was done, Roald Amundsen wrote, my boyhood dream. At that moment it was accomplished. Amundsen was eager to proceed westwards, but at King's Point the ice barred further progress, and the Norwegians reluctantly settled down for a third winter. The next step was to get the news to the press. The nearest telegraph office was in Fort Egbert outside Eagle City, Alaska, which was a 1,300-kilometer sledge trip away. On March 12, 1906, Amundsen arrived back at Herschel Island, having traveled over 2,600 kilometers by ski and dog sledge. He brought personal letters from family and friends to the men, in addition to the news of Norway's newfound independence. At this point, Vik was seriously ill and died a few days later. In July, Gjøa got underway on the last stage of a voyage. On August 30th, as they entered the Bering Strait, the men gathered on deck and drank a toast to the final accomplishment of the Northwest Passage by ship.